Oh, you might want to turn the
Yep.
yeah, or else it's not going to feedback.
Got to be able to see it. There we go.
This is where magic happens.
Yeah, we hope it's going to be it's going to work. All right. So thank you. Good evening, President, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you and honored to be in front of you tonight. I will provide you with a little more background, although that was a pretty great introduction, on how I ended up here in front of you. And I'd like to speak about my company, Medtronic, and how they are a leader in medical device technology and how they utilize engineering management for the latest technical device innovations. And I'm also going to try to play a video, but it didn't work, so I'm going to try to toggle here, so hopefully bear with me. So just really quick, my background. So I was born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota, a normal suburban upbringing. However, I planned on being a professional soccer player. And I found by my early 20s that wasn't going to work so well, so I decided to go back to school. And I started out in community college, and I met my wife in chemistry class. That was one of my first classes. And from there I went on to Votech school, and then I went on to get my BA and my minor in project management at Metropolitan State University. From there I went on and got my Master's of Science in Technology Management at the University of St. Thomas. I went on to University of Wisconsin-Platteville, got a Master's in Project Management. I decided I wanted an MBA, so I did an online MBA with the University of Phoenix, and then I finished my PhD in project management, actually civil engineering at the James Clark School of Engineering. So, a lot of education, lifelong learner. I started my career at 3M, so I worked graveyards for 5 years, and I went to school during the day and night whenever I could go to school, and that was a great experience. From there I started the medical device world with a company. It was owned by Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. They own 7 medical device companies, so I started my medical career there. And they were bought by Boston Scientific, so I did a short stint at Boston Scientific. And then I went to a startup, Advanced Neuroscience, as a director of product development. And that was a very eye-opening experience. I actually built a pyrolytic plant with a farmer there, and we became a pyrolytic company. So that was, I got to learn to weld and do other things that I never knew I could do. From there I went to a company called HeartStent, and I was a director of product development there, and we were creating left ventricular assist device. And actually Medtronic owns some of those patents right now, so it's pretty interesting. And from there I went to CHF Solutions, and I was validating clean rooms. So I've done a lot of different things. And in 2003 I ended up at Medtronic working in the electrophysiology area as a project manager. And I've had various titles as engineering manager, technology engineering manager, compliance manager, and now my current title, director of strategy and project management. And it also said I teach at the College of St. Scholastica in project management in graduate school. I teach project management at the University of Platteville in project management, and I teach a capstone at Metropolitan State University. So 2 of those are online, 1 is face-to-face, so I stay pretty busy. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Engineering management. So to me, engineering management is a career that brings together the technological problem-solving ability of engineering and the organizational, administrative, and planning abilities of management in order to oversee the operational performance of complex engineering-driven enterprises. So that's the way I view it. That's what I like, about engineering management, and I've been able to apply that in a lot of different areas. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to try to play a video. Hopefully here.
World War II had just ended.
And this is a little history on Medtronic that I'm going to speak about some more.
And the world's first antibiotic, penicillin, had been making headlines as a modern medical miracle. Meanwhile, in a tiny garage in Minneapolis, an electrical engineering student, Earl Bakken, quietly began repairing hospital equipment with his brother-in-law, Palmer Hermansley. The two named their humble little company Medtronic, and it wasn't long before doctors and nurses recognized their special skills. Could you modify this monitor? The nurses would ask. Could you build us a respirator? The doctors would inquire. And the two always did. one day, a request came that transformed Medtronic from a small repair company into what would eventually become a medical technology powerhouse. Famed cardiac surgeon Dr. Walter Lillehei asked Earl to develop a battery-operated pacemaker. Up until then, patients with irregular heart rates had to plug their large external pacemakers into wall outlets, limiting their mobility and making them vulnerable to power outages. Earl developed an innovative battery-operated pacemaker that was so small it could be worn by even the youngest patients. The device revolutionized cardiac care and put Medtronic on the map. For Earl, seeing how his work transformed patients' lives, how his devices helped to alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life, was so important that he transformed that driving force into a formal mission. The same mission continues to guide our work today. In fact, not one word has changed over the years. Even as Medtronic grew to become a global leader with therapies and tools to treat many of the world's most pressing healthcare conditions, our passion for learning, collaborating, creating, and healing continued. Because nothing is more important than the people who depend on us to make a difference.
So you can see from that video, a little history of Medtronic. Actually, this is 2003. This is a picture of me and Earl Bakken getting that medallion that they just showed you in the video. And that you get this after 6 months of being at Medtronic. So this is a big deal. And I actually met the CEO at the time, Art Collins, too. So they have it in an auditorium. It's something like this, and everyone goes up and gets their medallion. This picture here is Lou Leash, and he's one of the original 10 members at Medtronic, one of the original 10 employees. And he's wearing, you can't see it, but he's wearing a badge there. He's one of the original garage gang, because Medtronic started in a garage in Northeast Minneapolis. So I was lucky enough to meet him. My son was doing a presentation at Earl Bakken, and he was the father of his teacher, so he came in and spent some time with us, which was awesome. These next two pictures, the bottom one is actually me and Earl in March of 2018. I was actually in Kona, Hawaii, where he lives, and he's been meeting with Medtronic employees at any level for the last 25 years. All you have to do is make an appointment. So he spent 3 hours with me. And he had so many books and articles that he had to FedEx it back to me. I couldn't take it back on the plane. And he's just an amazing man. Unfortunately, we lost Earl in November 2018 at the age of 94. And he had a Medtronic stent, a Medtronic insulin pump, and a Medtronic pacemaker. So he was definitely the medical technology. But he also had at his home the largest private solar farm in the world. And that was just amazing. So he'd get on his electric wheelchair and he'd go out there with his iPad and show his little solar farm and how the batteries work and whatnot. So just an amazing time there, and I was so lucky to be there. Oh, sorry, and then the Post-it note there is really important. I asked Earl when I was there, I said, what one piece of advice could you give me or anyone else that's working at Medtronic to do our job better? And he said, a good leader listens to his or her people, and here's what they have to say. Now, this is someone that's 94 years old and very passionate about still creating innovation. In fact, he's so passionate, he pulled out a 100-year-old plan, and he said, here's the things in green that are done, but here's the things in red that I need you to help me finish. And he said, you really need to take this back. And he gives this to everybody, so it wasn't just me. But I mean, that's pretty impressive, someone that's 94 years old that's still that passionate about the company and about medical technology. So very blessed to be a part of his life and to have met him in Kona, Hawaii, which, by the way, is not easy to get to. He lives in like a state park, and you got to go through gates and stuff. So it's a pretty remote place, but a beautiful place. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Medtronic, and I want to let you know that we apply engineering management into what we do and all the innovations that we create. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of how that innovation management looks in action at Medtronic. So, what do we do? People think of us as a pacemaker company. They think of us as a diabetes pump company. I was just at the Biomedical Engineering Society last week, and I met a gentleman at my alma mater, University of Maryland. He was a student, and he actually had a 670G diabetes glucose pump, and he gave me a big hug, and he says, look, here's my pump. That's really the only consumer-facing product that we have. Everything else are implantables or surgical suites, so people don't really know that they utilize them. We're also deep brain stimulation experts, so neuromodulation. So I worked there for a couple of years. We do a lot of things with deep brain stimulation, and we do a lot more than that. We have 70 conditions in the human body, so that's a lot. I mean, we're the largest medical device manufacturer in the world, and we operate all over the world. We have 47,000 patents in our total portfolio, so that's a lot of patents. My boss has 70 patents himself, so a lot of people have 50 patents or more. That's not uncommon. A lot of people at Medtronic tend to stay there. The office that I'm in right now, the gentleman was there 43 years, so it's a very tenured company. And now this picture here on the left is what you saw in the video. It's Dr. Walt Lillihei, and he's working with the patient with the first battery-operated pacemaker. And Earl on the right has in his right hand, he has the world's first Micra, which is the leadless pacemaker. There's no leads, and it comes up through the femoral, has a 10-year battery life. It's just amazing. I actually have one with me if someone wants to see it. And you can see the change. We actually disrupted our own market in the pacing business. We've been the leader in pacing for over 50 years. We came out and disrupted ourselves. That's pretty amazing to do that in your own market. And this product's been FDA approved for a little over 2 years. So we have no competitors right now with this. And it's a niche market, but we're building the platform up. So it's very, very, very neat. And this is something that Earl said, look beyond the apparent, nothing is impossible. I think that's important, and we have a lot of ideas, we have a lot of innovations, but he knows that you have to remember that there's things that, nothing's impossible. If you want to do something, do a skunk works, we don't say go do that, but people do that, like 3M. 3M's in our backyard. So Earl was early on, he knew that's how things would get done and projects would get done. He knew how engineering management worked, and he was a great visionary that had a great idea, and even having that 100-year plan was pretty amazing. So the other thing that's amazing, they showed it in there and we just talked about a little bit, is the mission. And actually, not a word has changed since 1960 until last week. We added the word all to Tenet 5. And I can't remember exactly how it goes, but that is the first time since 1960 we changed a word. And that medallion that Earl has in his hands there, that's what everyone gets at the ceremony. They usually have those on their desk. And that drives how we make decisions in engineering or anything else. Because really, what are we at work? We're decision makers. And every little decision or big decision plays out in our products and our services that we perform. And so this here shows a rich history of the company, and you can see that we have things such as diabetes, neuromodulation. You can see the Micra on there, and then we just purchased Mazor not too long ago, and we launched the robotic system for Mazor. So that's a pretty amazing history of innovation. Doesn't show everything, but it just goes to show you, we did some of this internally, and we bought some of this, and again, it takes good engineering management to manage all this. The three basic areas that Medtronic is focused on is therapy innovation. So how do we make our therapies? How do we deliver those? Globalization, how do we get those therapies out to the people that need them? So how do we get penetration more into China, India, and those kind of places? And then economic value. How do we take these innovations and create economic value? So we look at innovation as we don't just throw it over the wall to the patient. We want to see how the outcomes are. So it's not just about the patient getting the device, but how do we monitor that patient and how do we give that patient all the best data and the things that they need. So it's a little bit different changing area for us, but we've probably had these three key areas for about 5 years. And then here you can see the 70 conditions. You can see that we're in the brain, the ears, nose, throat, diabetes again. We have a big spine division. We're pretty much everywhere in the body. And that makes it hard in my area because I'm in corporate science and technology, so I oversee all the groups, and we look about 10 years out into what might be good for the businesses. And when you're pretty much everywhere, it makes it pretty hard to say I'm going to work on this or work on that and prioritize it. But somehow we get by. So this next area, I just wanted to give you a little level set on what the company looks like. So we're basically broken up on 4 basic groups. The cardiovascular group, or CVG, that's our largest group. Diabetes group, that's really our smallest group. The minimally invasive therapies group is what we purchased Covidien about 5 years ago. That's basically that group. And then restorative therapies group, or RTG. So those are the 4 groups in which we manage, and then we have 20-some businesses underneath that. And all have their own profit and loss centers, and they all have their way of doing innovation and engineering management. So it makes it quite interesting. And here you can see on this slide, we're structured with these technology innovations, and we need successful engineering management to get them in the patients that need them. And the invention results in developing new therapies that result in new markets. The continuous innovation will enhance the clinical outcomes and economic value of existing products. And then this disruption is disrupted therapies in existing markets. Now this is something you think we might have had for a long time, but we really developed this over the last couple of years. And really this is our CEO, Omar Ishrak, which he's our CEO, and he's kind of the CTO, even though he doesn't call himself that. He has a PhD in electrical engineering and in signal processing. So he's an ultrasound expert. He came from GE. So when you go to a board meeting like this, you won't have this many people, but if you bring a technical issue to Omar, you better be ready, because he's going to go deep into the science and the technology and the engineering, and you can't get by if you don't know your stuff. But you can see some of these things where the micros under this disruption and the surgical robotics, which is fairly new for us, but it's a big deal. Again, this all takes really good engineering management. And just on our people, so we have roughly 90,000 people globally. In Minneapolis, where I'm at operational headquarters, we have 11,000 people, and we have about 15 facilities. And then we have 10,000 scientists and engineers. So that's a lot of scientists and engineers. And then about 1,600 clinical professionals. That's a lot of people. In fact, we have one of the largest CROs, I think around 800 people, and I think it's the only group that has a standard set of operating procedures across the company. So pretty big stuff. And then you can see one of the things to point out there is $2.3 billion in R&D investments. That's a lot of money, but it goes fast, so it's hard to fund all the things that we want to fund. And then here we're in 150 countries, 75 manufacturing sites, and our principal offices are in Dublin, Ireland. So we're an Irish company. When we purchased Covidien, due to the tax break, we became an Irish company, but the operational headquarters still are in Minnesota. So when we purchased Covidien, it really made us a global company. We went from about 41,000 people to about 90,000 people overnight, and that has its own pros and cons. And this is my last slide. This is the operational headquarters, I believe, on a summer night, and you can see the lightning in the background. And Earl Bakken, our co-founder, his favorite movie was Frankenstein. As a matter of fact, he grew up just down the road from here, and he restored an old theater, and that's where he used to go see the movie Frankenstein. He loved electricity and whatnot, so I love this this picture because of that. But I like the saying underneath too, the best way to have a good idea is to have lots of ideas. And I think as people in the engineering management profession, we need to have a lot of ideas to solve the small problems, the large problems, the complex problems, and that's how we're successful, by bringing more solutions to the table. So with that, I want to thank you, and hopefully that gave you an overview of Medtronic and a little bit of what I think of engineering management. Thank you. Like that.
We have time for questions.
All right.
So Medtronic used to have a policy of not licensing their patents. Is that still true? And if so, why?
It's such a big company, I don't think there's one policy that fits. Like I said, there's 20-some business units, and every business unit operates differently. From a corporate standpoint, I'd like to influence that and tell them how to do that, but it just doesn't work that way. I work for them, and I think, especially with the purchase of Covidien and the MITG group, they do things a lot different too, and they're more of a 510K instead of a PMA, so short-term versus long-term in the body, and they do things differently, so we're still bringing them on the journey. So I wish I had an easy answer on that. That's not an easy one. Good question though.
Hi, I noticed that you didn't have a presence in Africa. Is that part of your plan going forward, or was it strategic decisions to stay out of Africa?
No, we actually have a presence in Africa. We have sales offices in Africa. It may not show that on the map, but the emerging markets, Africa, all those markets, that's where we're starting to penetrate. The European and US markets are not our focus. It's more the other markets in the world. So Africa is actually on the list, but it's probably just sales centers at this point.
For your R&D, do you have an aspirational goal as far as percentage for technology transfer that makes it to the market?
That's a great question. We can't even probably decide what things are transferred in technology from the businesses and decide to get on common metrics. So as much as I'd like to say, yes, I know a number, I have an idea, but we don't have a good methodology of doing that. And a lot of that, again, is doubling in size with the company. And we didn't add resources in corporate, so we're still lean. But that's something we've been struggling with, that technology transfer, and how do we do it first, and what's the process, but then when's it successful? Because it seems like we throw things over there and then they reject them, they don't like it, doesn't work right. We change manufacturing plants, it doesn't work right in that plant versus another. So great question, but we're still struggling with that. If you have any answers, I'd love to talk offline. All right.
Any other questions?
I'll be around after if you have any questions.
Don't go anywhere.
All right.
All right. So it is my pleasure to present this commemorative
thank
obelisk to you, or square. Thank you. Oh, at this point, whatever.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, so I'm just going to put that back down. All right, there we go.
Thank you.
The money shot.
And I'm all wired up with all this stuff.
Thank you. It was very
Thank you.
good.
Thank you.